So life is a journey, and there are many different milestones along the way. No matter what chapter in the story of your life that you're currently riding, the one consistent is that you want to look your absolute best. The question is, how? Well, I'd like to introduce you to today's sponsor, Coofandy. Coofandy is a professional menswear brand, and their objective is for men to look their absolute best. One of the greatest things about Coofandy is that they are versatile in their clothing. It really doesn't matter what stage of life you're in, as Coofandy has casual wear, formal wear, summer wear, and gym wear like I'm sporting. Another thing about Coofandy is that their clothing not only looks stylish, but it is also extremely comfortable. Coofandy's men's apparel is top tier quality, so it's not really a surprise that they're sponsoring Christopher Bell and Joe Gibbs Racing. They have brought that same style not only to the racetrack, but also in terms of offering fans Christopher Bell's picks of his favorite attire from the Coofandy offerings. If you want to check that out, or if you want to find the styles that match the current chapter of life you're in, I encourage you to click the link in the description below to check out Coofandy's offerings. I would like to give a special thanks to Coofandy for sponsoring Digital Gas House. So Joe Gibbs is a man that expects a high caliber of performance no matter what it is. Some would say that was what helped him become one of the NFL's greatest coaches and win a Super Bowl with the Washington Redskins. It was also the driving force behind his NASCAR team, Joe Gibbs Racing. You look at Joe Gibbs Racing today, and this organization is one of the hallmark organizations in the Cup Series. They have had many successful drivers, crew chiefs, won various crown jewel races, and have won 5 NASCAR Cup Series championships. For every future Joe Gibbs Racing driver, they are going to be held to a high standard, not just because of the highs of the highs. Joe Gibbs also knows what it feels like to have a driver, crew chief, and team have all the resources to go out there and win races, yet for a majority of the season struggle to even run inside the top 30. This is the story of the number 11 team at Joe Gibbs Racing in 2005, which was far away from the Joe Gibbs Racing norm.
That's Leffler sitting sideways off the bumper of Casey Kane.
Leffler in the 11 car had nowhere to go.
Jason Leffler brings out the caution.
I think he was trying to get on pit road. I think.
Here we go. Jason Leffler in 11 car hits the wall hard.
Oh, round goes somebody on the back.
Leffler. Oh, trouble. Jason Leffler is around.
Oh, look out.
EP, you talked about it. Gotta be careful.
NRF Productions presents the worst Joe Gibbs Racing team. So in the 2000s, Joe Gibbs was eyeing NASCAR expansion like many other owners. Given the times that NASCAR was in, it was easy to understand why. NASCAR was economically healthy in the 2000s, and because of that, companies saw the ROI in sponsoring a full-time season for any driver in the field. There was also that gravitational pull in business where if one company decides to enter something, then the rivaling company follows right after. That was the case for FedEx, who wanted to rival UPS, which entered NASCAR in 2001 with Dale Jarrett. Considering his relationships within the company, Joe Gibbs was the favorite to land this sponsorship. FedEx even signed a letter of intent stating that they would sponsor a third full-time team beginning in 2005. As long as Joe Gibbs didn't do the asinine thing by mailing back the contract details to FedEx via UPS, the deal was his. So Joe Gibbs was about to reap the rewards of having 3 fully funded competitive cars for the 2005 season. Now, with 3 cars, he was also going to have extra resources, as more drivers and more engineers often means more data to be competitive. So Joe Gibbs had a big decision to make. Who was going to be that third driver for Joe Gibbs Racing? For this third team, Joe Gibbs expressed his desire for a veteran. He had his eyes set on namely Greg Biffle, as Biffle was not only a proven winner in the Cup Series, but it seemed like he wanted a fresh start. The chitter-chatter around the NASCAR Cup Series garage was that Greg Biffle was frustrated with Roush's engine program and he allegedly wasn't getting the best equipment at Roush. However, Greg Biffle and Jack Roush would ultimately work out their differences and go on to do successful things in the 2005 season. There were various other drivers like Jamie McMurray, Robbie Gordon, and Dave Blaney that were considered. Ultimately, in October, Joe Gibbs Racing would finally make the FedEx deal official at the Charlotte Douglas Airport and reveal to the world who their future driver would be. Joe Gibbs and FedEx saw Jason Leffler as the driver that could deliver them wins on Sunday. At the time, Leffler was a driver that definitely had potential, but he had yet to gain the trust of an owner to turn that potential into success. In his first stint in the NASCAR Cup Series with Ganassi, Leffler was released from his multi-year deal before reaching the checkered flag on his rookie season. Leffler knew that second chances were rare, and so he made the most of his opportunity with Haas CNC in the NASCAR Busch Series. It was with this opportunity where Leffler reached some new personal highs by winning the Nashville race to mark as his first Busch Series win. Still, Jason Leffler signing with Joe Gibbs allegedly caused some legal issues between he and Haas Racing. This resulted in Leffler getting benched in favor of Hendrick development driver Blake Feast. Regardless, Jason Leffler in the NASCAR Busch Series had proven that he was a formidable driver. So the FedEx number 11 team comprised of Jason Leffler with some Cup experience and had been matured by the NASCAR Busch Series. Still, you would think that Joe Gibbs would be a bit conservative and pair him up with a veteran crew chief. So, what crew chief did Joe Gibbs have in mind? Dave Rogers, with zero crew chief experience, would be paired with Jason Leffler, who was entering just his second season as a driver in the Cup Series.
What are you, fucking stupid?
This was a questionable pairing because now the 11 team was one of the most inexperienced groups in the entire NASCAR Cup Series. However, you could also make the argument that maybe their youth would make them more hungry for success than some of the veteran pairings. Nonetheless, Jason Leffler, Dave Rogers, and the FedEx 11 team were looking to do Joe Gibbs Racing things in this 2005 season. So Jason Leffler got the honors of making his second start in the Daytona 500 with a car capable of winning. Unfortunately, Jason Leffler would get involved in a wreck, then the next week at the California Speedway, follow it up with an engine failure. 2 races in, 2 DNFs. The next 2 races, Vegas and Atlanta, would be 2 mediocre showings before an early wreck at Bristol ruined the 11 team's chances at a solid finish. After 5 races, Jason Leffler was ranked 33rd in points, but this wasn't a total shock. So the way the rules were in the 2005 NASCAR Cup Series season, it put a new, inexperienced driver crew chief pairing at a massive disadvantage. The 11 team didn't just have to adapt to a brand new aero package. They also had a lot less time to dial in their race car since a majority of the races were impound races, meaning that every team in the NASCAR Cup Series started the race on their qualifying setup. Still, this was a Joe Gibbs Racing team and the expectation was that they were going to figure things out. In Martinsville, the JGR Chevrolets had race contending pace. Unfortunately, Tony Stewart would suffer wheel problems and Bobby Labonte suffered from a broken valve. It would actually be Jason Leffler carrying the torch for Joe Gibbs Racing on that day, with a respectable finish for a driver returning to the Cup Series. This should have been the race that alleviated the off-season question marks about Jason Leffler as a driver and Dave Rogers as a crew chief. However, Jason Leffler wouldn't be able to celebrate his small victory. Not even a week after his solid Martinsville run, the first rumors in the garage spread about a driver change for the 11 team. Ward Burton, who was more of the veteran presence JGR was originally looking for, was rumored to replace Jason Leffler as early as Darlington. Shooting down this rumor with an AR-15 was JD Gibbs. JD called Jason to reassure him that this was his ride, and the two even had a good laugh out of the rumors. During this phone call, there were two things that Jason Leffler took away from this. His job was secure, but his performance at Martinsville needed to become the norm. Unfortunately, that incredibly strong run at Martinsville would be an abnormality for Jason Leffler. The 11 team would rattle off 5 consecutive finishes outside the top 25. This was the outlier at Joe Gibbs Racing because the other teams at JGR were starting to hit their stride. The 11 team stretch actually caused this program to drop out of the top 35. So unfortunately, Jason Leffler and the FedEx number 11 team lost their golden ticket into the Coca-Cola 600. Still, they had the resources to be able to qualify on speed. I mean, come on, this is a Joe Gibbs Racing team. You really think that this program is going to be in jeopardy with all the resources and experience within the shop to avoid the absolute doomsday of failing to qualify for the Coca-Cola 600, right? In Coca-Cola 600 qualifying, the number 11 team failed to put up a lap to make the race. To make matters worse, Jason Leffler could feel his seat getting a little toasty as he was watching the Coca-Cola 600 from his couch. Bobby Labonte didn't just deliver FedEx their best finish in NASCAR, but almost delivered them their first victory. So, a Joe Gibbs Racing team failing to qualify for any race, nonetheless the Coca-Cola 600 was unacceptable. This was a program that needed a shakeup, especially before the challenging summer grind. Joe Gibbs Racing would replace Dave Rogers as crew chief with Mike Ford. They would do so weeks after Ford resigned from his position as crew chief of the Yates number 88 Cup car. Now, Mike Ford joining FedEx Racing wasn't just the perfect opportunity for gold standard marketing. Ford had a resume of succeeding with NASCAR champions like Dale Jarrett and Bill Elliott. If there was any crew chief that could stabilize the inconsistencies and underperformance of the number 11 program, it was Mike Ford. Instantly, Ford's leadership and knowledge would rub off on Jason Leffler. In his first race with Ford as crew chief, Leffler didn't make any dumb mistakes and got a respectable 20th place finish. This was a solid stepping stone towards better performances over the summer. That run was short-lived. Early in the race at Pocono, Leffler would get into a wreck, which meant a bad finish. Another top 20 at Michigan showed that there was some progression, but it wasn't coming fast enough. The 11 team had made no progress in the top 35 battle. Jason Leffler and the 11 team again lacked a golden ticket to safeguard themselves from a catastrophic qualifying lap in Sonoma. So, without a guaranteed starting spot into the race, Jason Leffler would get benched in favor of the quasi-retired Terry Labonte. While Labonte had lackluster numbers at Sonoma, JGR was depending on runs like 2002 to help get the 11 team out of this hole. Plus, if all else fails, at the least, they were guaranteed into this race due to Terry Labonte's past champions provisional. Paired with Mike Ford, Terry would deliver for the 11 team. This program would have their best well-rounded race of the season, with Terry tying the season best finish of Jason Leffler. Because of this result, the 11 team was back in the top 35. In theory, the 11 team being guaranteed into the races again should have relieved some of the pressure that Jason Leffler was feeling. However, when he climbed back into his number 11 car and sat in his custom-made seat, his ass was still feeling a bit toasty. The newest rumor was that Michael Waltrip, set to leave DEI after 2005, would bring his Napa sponsorship over and replace Jason Leffler. So as if the media circus swarming Jason Leffler at every single track wasn't enough pressure, he also had to deal with a teammate that was having an unimaginable stretch of races. For the summer Daytona race, Jason Leffler earned just his second top 20 of the season. Tony Stewart nabbed his second win of the year. Leffler followed that up with a 20th place finish in Chicago and a 24th place finish in New Hampshire. In that same New Hampshire race, Tony Stewart dominated the afternoon en route to his third victory in 4 races. Then you had the 2005 Brickyard 400, which was one of the biggest races on the NASCAR calendar. It turns out the lights were too bright for Jason Leffler, who collected his 7th finish, 30th or worse. He watched on from pit road, frustrated as Tony Stewart climbed the fence as the race winner. The 20 team now had 4 wins on the season, while the 11 team was still searching for their first top 10 finish. While Tony Stewart was contending for a championship, Jason Leffler was struggling to remain in the top 35 in points. The disparities between the two were insane because these were 2 drivers that had a similar racing background and were driving similar equipment. What was going wrong? So, up until this point, Joe Gibbs Racing had tried desperately to clear out the smoke. Whether that was laughing off rumors, whether it was reiterating to Jason Leffler that they've never released a driver, or saying how they trust Jason and they believe in his talents. They had tried to clear away the smoke, but as they say, where there's smoke, there's fire. August 8th, 2005. Jason Leffler, signed to a multi-year contract, was released after making just 19 starts with JGR. JD Gibbs gave a straightforward explanation. NASCAR is a performance-based profession and Jason Leffler did not perform. The 11 team was now in a lame duck year, which was something abnormal for the rising powerhouse of Joe Gibbs Racing. Looking to stabilize their performance and figure things out for 2006, Joe Gibbs turned the wheel over to Terry Labonte. Making 4 more starts for the 11 team, Terry Labonte was subpar except for Richmond. In race 26, this Joe Gibbs Racing program finally got their first top 10 finish of the season. Now, in the short term, the 11 team relied on Terry Labonte to help them build their program up, but in the long run, this number 11 car was an audition for 2006. JGR's top prospect, JJ Yaley, made 4 starts in this car with a best finish of 25th. Less than ideal for an organization with a driver in the thick of the championship hunt. For Kansas, Joe Gibbs was looking for a driver that could achieve the same high bar of excellence that Tony Stewart was achieving. With that in mind, Joe Gibbs knew exactly what time it was.
It's Denny time.
25-year-old Denny Hamlin would get his call up to the big leagues. In qualifying for the race, he was pushing a good lap. Maybe, just maybe, this was the driver that was gonna turn things around for JGR.
Oh, look out.
EP, you talked about it. Gotta be careful.
The crash in qualifying would snowball into a poor starting spot, which snowballed into a bad finish. Although, Denny Hamlin didn't get a proper chance to show what he could do as a driver as he cut a tire early in the race. Denny Hamlin was hoping to make a statement not just to Joe Gibbs but the entire NASCAR industry, which he would do in the 2005 Bank of America 500. From the 39th starting position, Denny Hamlin drove up to the front and remained there for most of the night. Just 5 months removed from Jason Leffler failing to qualify for the Coca-Cola 600, at that same track, Denny Hamlin would get an 8th place finish. 2 more top 10s at Martinsville and Texas showed that Denny Hamlin was performing at a Cup Series level. However, the pinnacle of Denny Hamlin's 7-race audition in this number 11 car would take place at the Phoenix Raceway. Denny Hamlin won his first career pole award and led 23 laps. In this race alone, Hamlin surpassed the laps led by Leffler, Labonte, and Yaley combined. So after Denny Hamlin crashed early at Homestead, finally, this nightmare season for the JGR 11 team was over. The number 11 team finished 33rd in the 2005 owner standings. To this day, this is the worst rank for a full-time JGR team. However, the feeling for this number 11 program after the final race was bittersweet. This program had a lot of momentum as they not only got the results, but they finally found a solid driver-crew chief pairing that could go out and be competitive. In the closing weeks of the season, it was confirmed that Denny Hamlin would become the team's full-time driver in 2006. A rightful promotion, as when compared to Leffler, Labonte, and Yaley, Hamlin had the better average finish. As history would play out, this disastrous 2005 season turned out to be the necessary steps towards this number 11 team becoming competitive. In 2006, Denny Hamlin would go on to have one of the greatest rookie seasons in NASCAR history. Denny Hamlin didn't just sweep the Pocono Mountains clean and finished a respectable third place in points. The 11 team was the most improved program from 2005 to 2006 with a complete 180 in performance. The JGR number 11 team with Denny Hamlin blossomed into the championship contenders that they were expected to be. This has been one of the cornerstones for success in the NASCAR Cup Series over the last 2 decades to where there have been minimal changes. Denny Hamlin has retained his title as full-time driver, even still to this day, performing at such an elite level. The only changes have been a couple crew chief changes, ironically, one of which was Dave Rogers crew chiefing the 11 team again. So, when looking back at the number 11 team in 2005, it was in many ways the worst season for a Joe Gibbs Racing team. JGR as an organization struggled right out of the gate with the new rules. They went through a change in direction, going from the inexperienced Dave Rogers to veteran Mike Ford. Jason Leffler failed to get results, and JD Gibbs really didn't do enough to silence the silly season circus around the 11 team. However, these struggles were necessary in order for the 11 team to blossom into the contenders that they were meant to be with Denny Hamlin. This season from the JGR number 11 is such an abnormality, not just when you consider the fact that Joe Gibbs Racing has such a winning culture, but also the high pedigree of performance that JGR has set for themselves over the years.